Hey guys, it's Beth and welcome back to my channel, and today is June 10th, so it's time for 10 on the 10th, which is the card collaboration hosted by Kim at MetalScrappinChick, and each month we try to make some Christmas cards. Each month throughout the year we try to make some Christmas cards so that at the end of the year, at Christmas season, when things get busy, we don't have to do as much work. So I pulled out some items from my stash for my Use It Up 2020 challenge to use in the month of June, and that was kind of my focus for my Christmas cards this month. So my main things that I wanted to use were, I had some K & Company embellishments, like 3D embellishments, and they were from 2013, but they were the Yuletide Medallion Layered Accents. And then I had bought these. I remember I bought these at Archivers, but I also inherited, I think from my mother-in-law, these Yuletide adhesive borders, also from K & Company, so these coordinated together. I did not have any of the paper though, so I went through my kind of loose paper stash and pulled out 4 sheets that I felt kind of coordinated color-wise and with the style, like that vintage antique feel. So I had a sheet of paper from Kaisercraft Dear Santa, which was this green music sheet. I had 2 sheets of this, which is from Me and My Big Ideas, and it was the Fantastic Christmas. And then I had 1 sheet of Paper Studios paper. Let me find a good representation of it. And it was just like an off-white music sheet, and now I can't find it. There it is. So it was just like a simple off-white red music sheet. So I kind of combined all those together, and of course I didn't need all 4 pattern paper sheets because I ran out of the embellishments fairly quickly. The border strips did last me a while longer, but then I had paper that I ended up having to use up after the fact because, you know, I can't, if I pulled it out from a Use It Up 2020 challenge, I can't put it back. Like, that's just my OCD kicking in. So I did end up using all of those up as well. So I used the heck out of this vintage photo ink pad. I distressed pretty much every piece of paper and even some of the border strips. And then I did use a bunch of several stamp sets from my stash just for different sentiments or images. So even though I knew I really wanted to use these up, I loved them, and I really wanted to use them because it's such a bulky piece of packaging that I wanted to get it out of my drawer. But the border strips, trying to figure out how to use up these border strips was really throwing me. Like, I could not figure out how to get started. So I pulled out my sheetload of card sketches and kind of went through to see which ones, because I know Call Me Crafty Owl, like, a lot of times will include some type of strip, you know, that I might be able to use my border strips for. So luckily Alicia came through and I found 2 sheetload sketches that I was able to use just to kind of get me started and get me in the flow of the cards. So this is the March 2020 sheet load, and it has this strip going across right here. So I did make a couple versions of those. And at one point, I had run out of the K & Company embellishment. So I looked all through my Christmas embellishment stash and couldn't find anything else like antique-y, vintagey. I had like a retro 50s, 60s vintage, but I didn't have anything that was really like antique-y. So I went to my Silhouette and found an image. It's like a little Santa girl in a tree, and it had this green scalloped border around it already. So I just printed it onto craft cardstock, fussy cut around it, and then inked the edges, and then came back in with some Wink of Stella on it. And I used cardstock from my bottom section, and then the pattern paper, the Mombi pattern paper at the top. And then the border strip I used, it's actually, I think, supposed to go vertically because it's got these birds and the packages. But at that time, I couldn't really figure out how I could use up several strips of that vertically with the stuff I was working with. So I just went ahead and put it horizontal, and hopefully nobody will notice. other than you, that I've all told my little secret to. But then I came back in and embellished with some little bitty cardstock circles that I added Wink of Stella to, just to kind of play off the glitter that's in the border strip. And then I also added Wink of Stella on the frame of my picture here. So I have like 6 of those, and then I did a different variation using a different border strip, the same principle, and I think even the same papers. But on this one, I have a stitch circle die cut and then added the K & Company, like the bigger embellishments. And then, so I was able to get 4 of those. So then I went to the January 2020 sketch and used a thinner. This one called for a thinner border. So there was this one, and it looks like roses, but I don't think it is. I don't know what the flower is. But it was like a thinner kind of floral border strip. And so again, I used pattern paper on the top, cardstock on the bottom. I have my sentiment stamped here on white, backed on craft, and then used some of the smaller K & Company embellishments. I used 3 on each one, you know, just to kind of use those up and I grouped them together since they were smaller, so I got 4 of those. And then I just got to the point where I was trying to use up scraps. I ended up doing some non-card projects, trying to use up the border strips and the paper as well, and I will share those in my end of the month Use It Up 2020 challenge video. But so then at the end I kind of had a bunch of scraps left and was just trying to figure out how to use them up kind of the quickest way possible. And so here I combined the Mombi pattern paper with that Paper Studios music sheet paper behind it, and ended up cutting them into 3x4 pieces, backed them on cardstock that was 3 1/4 by 4 1/4, and just put them, kind of offset them a little bit and put them on a cardstock mat. But you can see this one, there's like a little bit of remnants of a border strip peeking out, and that is one that I ended up kind of cutting it in half and putting it on either side because it wouldn't go all the way across. And then here I did the same thing. There's another little bitty border strip up here, just trying to use up those smaller pieces. This I think is one of my favorite cards because I love the Santa and how like he was the focal point on this one. But again, there's border strip peeking out there, and then just added my little sentiment down here, and I just kind of let that one go because I wanted him to be the star of that show. I had this good sized piece of the music sheet paper left, so just took it easy, added it onto a cardstock mat, my sentiment, backed it on that same red cardstock, and I just realized I didn't even ink any of that because I did a lot of inking on these. So here I'm using, there was a Santa and tree, and like he's got his little bag of gifts here. I hadn't used any of that yet. So I just took it across the top here and then added my sentiment and, you know, matted it there. A couple of those. Here I was trying to use up the green. I didn't like this border strip directly on the green paper, so I backed it on some red cardstock in this case. And then I have my sentiment on that same red cardstock and then pulled in some more of those little punched red circles. Couple of those. Here is the same design I had used earlier, just used a different border strip going across the top. This one I had a big piece left, so I decided to use it as is. Just added a simple Merry Christmas sentiment up here. Again, you know, we had that nice Santa and the big tree, so I didn't want to add a whole lot to cover that. So I have a flower punch. It's like this pointed petal flower punch, and decided that if I layered it up, it might look a little bit like a poinsettia. So I decided, and I had a bunch of like cardstock scraps, and so I just decided to punch the flowers, and then I did ink the edges of them, layered 2 of them together, kind of offset, and then used a small craft cardstock circle that I punched as my center, so I think they're close enough to a poinsettia. Here I had one long strip of this pattern left, so I just cut it down into 2 equal-sized pieces and put them on my card mat, and then covered it with some green cardstock, added my sentiment, and at this point I didn't have enough cardstock scraps left and didn't feel like cutting down any more cardstock, so I would have liked to have done 3 on here, 3 my little makeshift poinsettias, but I just went with 2 at the bottom. This one, I did end up using this border strip in a vertical orientation as it was meant to be one time because I was like, I had this big square left of pattern paper, and so I thought, okay, I could use that behind here. And that was actually 2 pieces that I kind of pieced together. And I didn't really have any good, I didn't feel like cutting down any red cardstock. I would have to, like, I was out of it on my desk, so I would have to pull out, you know, actually turn around, pull a whole sheet out of my drawer. Hard work. No, but I don't know, I didn't feel like cutting into another sheet of cardstock. So I just pulled out, it was in the Cardabella one, there was this little image here, and I don't know if it's meant to be a poinsettia or a flower or a snowflake, but I took it as a poinsettia. Just stamped it in some dark red around the card base just to give some detail, like interest behind my paper here, and then added a little sentiment. By this point, I was just kind of done because I'd made so many cards and then so many other projects trying to use up the border strips and then that extra paper that I had pulled out. So, because you know me, I can't just put it back. I have to use it. If I pulled it out to use it, I'm going to use it. So here, again, just trying to use up some of the scraps that I had left, and these strips were all the same size, so I just kind of spaced them out, pieced them together, and then I threw a sentiment on there, and then I kind of was going to let them go, and they sat there for a little bit, and I thought, no, like, you're almost done, you can afford to put a little more effort into finishing these. So that's when I started punching some more poinsettias or flowers to use as poinsettias, and so I got 2 of those. So I got 28 cards this month. So that is another good chunk of cards that's going to go into my stash of Christmas cards for the end of the year that I can donate, use for myself, sell, give, you know, gift, whatever. I have another 28 cards that I can add to that stash. I used up the 4 sheets of pattern paper and the pack of embellishments and the pack of border strips. And again, I did end up having to make some other projects to get that used up, and we'll share those at the end of the month in my Use It Up 2020 challenge video. But there are a bunch of other awesome crafty participants in this collaboration. They will be listed, their links will be listed in the description box below, so you can go check them out, see the cards they made and what they made this month for the cards for their stash. And I thank you guys so much for your time today, and I hope you're all having a crafty day.